Thank you for coming on Cryptidbits.
Yeah,
Hap-
absolutely.
Happy Cinco de Mayo. Sorry to keep you in on a holiday.
Hey, no problem.
I don't know if you were going to go out in the town for a little while, but I won't keep you for too long. So tonight we're with Michael Thompson, author, illustrator. I had actually read filmmaker also on your page.
Yeah. I've done some short films, and I have a YouTube channel where I talk about writing and illustrating and stuff.
That's excellent. Did you want to talk about tonight? I thought maybe the Winslow Hoffner book.
Yeah,
Is that
definitely.
okay
Yeah.
with you? Okay, excellent. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it, and then we can get into some questions?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm an independent author and illustrator. I've been publishing my book since I was 13 years old, and this is one of my latest books that I've been putting a lot of my current time and energy into and love. And it's right here. We got Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters. It's a folkloric fantasy on the high seas about cryptids, sea monsters, epic urban legends that few have beheld. But there's one man who happens to have seen them all, the gallant fisherman, Winslow Hoffner, and he's regaling his tales of adventure to a couple of journalists who discover their small harbor town is harboring incredible secrets.
And you illustrated this also?
I did, yeah, I did all the
That's incredible.
illustrations. Every chapter has a really cool portrait
Hmm.
of the monsters and the mythical beings that Winslow encounters on his epic voyages.
And you're self-published?
I am, yep.
That's crazy. I was going to ask if you go through a company or you just you do everything yourself.
Yeah, I just do everything myself. Yep.
Do you find it's better that way so you don't lose any type of anything in the
Personally,
translation?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, personally for me, that's what I like to do. I kind of
And
got in like right at the ground level when the self-publishing things were just starting.
mhm.
So
And what inspired you to write this book?
I was very inspired by urban legends and tales of reported cryptids, monsters that have not been proven by science. I love them, and actually, your background is one of my inspirations. I love the Carta Marina,
Hmm.
Olaus Magnus, and all those amazing vintage sea maps.
I
Had
love the There Be Monsters maps. Always fascinated me growing up.
Yeah, I
Ha-
encountered some of those when I was very young, and some illustrations that were inspired by those
mhm.
medieval sort of looking creatures. And in some cases, it's almost just like, filigree to fill the negative space of the ocean. But in other cases, they're, the real life interpretation of creatures that didn't have the full scientific understanding of them yet. I love like the double blowholes of a lot
Yeah.
of them.
I like
It's
looking
so
at
cool.
the older illustrations and it's like, this is a rhinoceros and it's nothing like it, but it's a tale told to somebody who's drawing this, and this is just what it ends up looking like.
Right, yeah.
Have you had yourself any type of cryptid encounter that
Personally,
swayed
no.
you? No? Okay.
No, I haven't yet. Always looking.
Hmm.
But
Exactly.
but, uh, but I definitely like I certainly had, my share of spiritual encounters,
Hmm.
things of that sort, things like that. But no flesh and blood monsters yet.
If you were to
Although
run
I'm
into one,
fascinated by them.
which one would you love
Ooh.
to run into? In a
Hmm.
safe environment, I would say.
In a safe environment. Lots of the ones that I write about wouldn't be too safe to run into.
Yeah.
Although Winslow himself has this certain charm this way with the monsters where he has the kind of this understanding with them. So if I could have Winslow's charm, I would love to see some sea monsters. Um, but I do like I'm into all kinds of stuff.
Hmm.
Bigfoot I think would be cool to see from a safe distance.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so I'm a big fan of all things
Excellent.
cryptozoological.
How do you find the time to write? Is this your full time or?
This is my full-time job.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I just
excellent.
wake up and I write and
Hmm.
or draw whatever the project happens to be, and I like having, well, mainly focusing on one at a time, but
Hmm.
having kind of a side project at the same time to kind of keep myself fresh.
Yeah.
So you have the main project that gets the most of your attention, and then it's good to have a little side project that's also productive, but something you can do a little bit more casually.
Yep. Something to kind of not distract you, but when you have to kind of, I guess, distract yourself and you're thinking too hard about something, you can always step to the side and do the other project.
Yeah, like I can draw with music and listening to
Hmm.
podcasts and stuff like that, but with when I'm writing, I like to have it silent and just be fully immersed. So usually my side project is something illustrative and
Hmm.
working on portraits for future books.
Now, do you start, like, say one day you wake up and you draw a sea monster? Do you embellish off of that or do your words come first?
Hmm. Oh yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I have always drawn a lot. I think I do draw a lot first.
Hmm.
It's different for different projects, but with you can sort of when you're deep in the mode of drawing, you can sort of discover small details that you might not have discovered if the inverse was true. If you were writing and perhaps you were coming from a broader perspective
Hmm.
on the creatures, say. But when you're drawing and you're adding in those little details, and then you find yourself adding in those fine points, like maybe it has like a beard of barbels or
Hmm.
feelers, or maybe the sail is articulated in an interesting way. Maybe it has some type of interesting body part like that. So with the Winslow series, I'm very much inspired by the initial reports, and
Hmm.
then I sort of do my own kind of thing with them, and I try to imagine what they might have been, especially if there's a lot of mystery
Yeah.
regarding what they were. There's a big emphasis in the first Winslow Hoffner book on globsters,
Yep.
which, for those who may not be familiar, they're creatures that washed ashore that may have been decayed, so you can't fully tell what they were, whether there's something known and they just look alien, or they were fully unknown. And usually there's a lot of mystery surrounding them. Our introductory creature to the Winslow Hoffner world is this middle figure here, Gambo, which was based on a creature that washed ashore in 1983 in the Gambia.
Mhm.
And there was not a lot known about this creature. It sort of washed ashore. They didn't know if it was a relict precursor to dolphins or perhaps the last of the mosasaurs. It had kind of an unusual body plan. But before anyone was able to scientifically document it, it was chopped up. The head was sold to a tourist. It was buried in the sand. And like many of these fascinating stories, it was lost to time. And so that opened up an interesting
Yep.
possibility for me to imagine what it might have been. And I say, okay, what can I do with this thing? And in storytelling, in a lot of my books, I like to start with the most unbelievable thing possible and make that believable.
Hmm.
It's an interesting writing puzzle for me, and then I think it's a great way to immerse someone immediately into the world of the story. And in this case, where I kind of gave my own take on Gambo, I created what was called a fire-breathing fish in the book. Winslow Hoffner's incredible encounter with a monster fish, and it was a fire-breathing fish. And so, how do I make fire breathing believable? And so, I came up with there's certain elements that can burn underwater, like magnesium.
Hmm.
And with Gambo, I decided, well, this will be sort of has this biological sort of motive of creating this, and that's how she breathes under the water is vaporizing it and huffing the fumes. And so that's sort of one of those things. And as much as I'm inviting the reader to believe, Winslow is inviting our main character, John Chaplin, who's a skeptical journalist, to believe as well.
Oh, that's excellent. Don't give away too much. You want people to buy this and read it for
Oh,
themselves.
sure. Oh, there's lots
Okay,
in
excellent.
there.
So do you find what's the best time to write for you? Do you wake up and immediately just have that urge to write, or do you kind of have to get yourself in the mood for it?
I wake up and I have either a coffee or some type of tea or
Hmm.
something, and muse a little bit, think a little bit. And the biggest thing for me is getting like the perfect first line
Yep.
to the story. I'm very big on first lines. The first
It's
line in Winslow came to me one day, and that's usually sort of how it goes when I'm writing stuff. Either there's
mhm.
an initial foundational line of dialogue, or there's an initial cool image, and from there the story kind of blooms outward. with Winslow is the line, and it came through not only the line of dialogue, but also the dialect, the way that Winslow spoke
Mm-hmm.
came through, and it was, "Have you ever stared straight into the eyes of death and scoffed?" And so I thought, oh, that's cool. So I wrote that down real quick in a document. I don't remember what I titled it, but it just sort of went away, and then eventually, this was way back in high school, and
Oh, wow.
I got the assignment to write a short story, and I thought, well, let's revisit that Eyes of Death line. And I thought to myself, what are first of all, who is this character? Well, the accent, it reminds me of a fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the eyes of death? Well, it couldn't be like your standard fish. It couldn't even be a shark. It had to be something way cooler than that. And so one of my foundational interests came to the top, which was my interest in cryptozoology and folklore. And immediately I remembered the mystery of the Gambo globster. And so I thought, yes, let's imagine what this beast might have been, and that's sort of how it went from there.
And when you write books as this, do you find yourself learning anything as you're writing them?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think as a writer, it's important to sort of let your characters tell you the story. Much like John Chaplin is a reporter in the
Mm-hmm.
book, I feel like I'm kind of a reporter for my characters. I know sort of the broad swaths going into it, but I think it's important to let your characters sort of guide you and find out where they take you.
And I do want to bring up, I know this was another book. I know we were going to talk about Winslow Hofstadter, but The World of the Orb.
Yeah.
And I follow you on Instagram, and I noticed
Mhm.
at a lot of your book signings and cons you go to, there's characters holding it. How does that feel to
Yeah.
have a piece of your book in the real world being, I just get not passed around, but people
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
pose with it? That must be
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, it's neat. It's neat seeing that. It's surreal. Um I always like multimedia sort of
Hmm.
how can we bring this into the real world, and on my book signing tables, whether it's a convention or like a book signing at a local shop, I like to bring the orb,
Hmm.
which is my real world prop. It doesn't teleport anyone to alternate worlds yet, but
Not yet.
uh not yet. We're working on it.
It's in there.
Working out the things.
What
But
ins- what inspired you
yeah.
to write that? Did you,
Oh boy.
because that
World of
was
the Orb.
pre um
Mhm.
well, I guess you had the idea for the Winslow Hoffner's in 2013, but that one came out after the Orb. So you kind of took a
Yeah, World of the Orb. Well, World of the Orb. All of my books I've kind of been planning for a long time. They've
okay.
all been percolating in my mind. I have notebooks upon notebooks filled with character biographies, and one of my processes is actually drawing the characters and then sort of learning about them. And World of Europe was definitely one of those ways where I've got an encyclopedia's worth of magic systems and fantasy
Yeah.
societies and creatures, and that was inspired by a lot of mythology blended with some of my own stuff. I had a great interest in drawing monsters uh, forever, and
Yeah.
epic battles waged in the margins of my notebooks back in elementary school. And with World of the Orb, I had so many, and I thought, well, surely I wouldn't have the opportunity to tell a story about each one of them. But if I create one cohesive world where they could all live, and then introduce a couple of characters from Earth that get lost in that world and then have to use their wits to find their way home, that could be a great way to tour this magical world that I created. And World of the Orb is the ultimate world building book for people who are fans of high fantasy.
Hmm.
And that's about two best friends who sneak away from their group on a field trip to the Museum of Natural History. And they break the one rule, which is not to go in the artifact room and definitely not to touch the orb. And when they do, they're zapped into another world of monsters, myths, and magic that sets them on an epic, harrowing treasure hunt across these strange lands to find Earth again. And this is my fantasy map of all
That's
those strange
excellent.
lands, and you kind of zoom in as you go. The maps show the travel paths of the characters.
Do you have a favorite sci-fi show, book, anything that kind of oomped
I
you into
was
this?
I was definitely a big fan of Star Wars. So lots
Hmm.
of people who enjoy, like, the classic Star Wars movies enjoy
Yep.
World of the Orb. I don't know if you can see, but I got like a wampa up there.
I saw your
Um,
Jaws poster actually first.
yeah, yeah,
It's
I
one of
do
my
have dogs.
it's my favorite movie, so my eye immediately went to that. But
Yeah, yeah, I saw your post about it. Um, yeah,
happy
I got
belated Star Wars Day. Then we're a day off, but
yeah, well, it's the Revenge of the Fifth, so.
exactly, we're close. What surprised you the most when you were writing your The Incredible Encounters book?
Oh, so many things surprised me with Winslow. With World of the Orb, that I there was more planning in World of the Orb. I kind
Hmm.
of uh I knew because I think there's more imagery, and I get a lot of the images in moments of inspiration, whereas Winslow is so dialogue driven that and dialogue is one of the elements that surprises me the most with writing. I always say if you understand your characters well enough, then you can pop them into any situation, and then you'll instinctively know how they'll respond. And one of those ways is through dialogue. And so you have two characters and you understand their personality, then naturally sort of, and you introduce conflict or whatever it may be, then naturally they start to bounce off each other, I find. But as I was writing Winslow, the whole thing was kind of a surprise because I imagined that it would be sort of maybe a loosely connected series of short stories,
Hmm.
with some recurring characters. But as I wrote it, I found out that this wanted to be its own full novel, and that was a really nice surprise. One of my big surprises with writing Winslow, I had come to the middle of it, and there was this character here, this massive lobster, who I named Claus, which is actually an homage to Jaws. There's a lot of Jaws homages in
Okay.
in Winslow, um, but that sort of came to me in an image. I could see Winslow hanging on for dear life with his first mate as this massive lobster was crashing through the waves, um, and I was like, that's interesting. I couldn't remember any cryptids that were giant lobsters.
Hmm.
But I looked into it. I could find some vintage sea maps that presented massive crustaceans, and I was like, that works. But with Winslow, I like to have the real world tether, is what I call it. So
Hmm.
if you search up any of the monsters in Winslow, generally that'll lead you to those old reports. Especially, I give enough information, with the dates and stuff, where it's kind of this it creates this mythos. And lots of people ask me, is Winslow a real person? I was like, no, no, it's based on real purported encounters, but Winslow's my creation. But with the lobster, I didn't have that real world tether. So instead I looked up, okay, what is the world's largest lobster that was ever caught?
Hmm.
And lo and behold, I was very, very pleasantly surprised to find out that in the exact place that the book takes place is where the biggest lobster on record, was caught. And it was like
Oh,
over 40 pounds or something. And it
so
was
that was just
big.
perfect synchronicity when everything fell into place
Yes,
that
it
way.
was. Yes, yes. So Winslow takes place in Nova Scotia, and the
Okay.
record-breaking catch was in the 70s, and the lobster was over 40 pounds, mid
That's
40-pound range.
crazy.
Yeah, and he's had some time to grow
Yeah.
in uh, in the Winslow book, and that takes place in the chapter called "It Weren't No Sandbar." And so, uh, it's that's how big it was. Winslow mistook its shell for a
When you
sandbar.
first did his accent, I had placed it in my head. It immediately I had gone to Maine.
Mm,
So it's
interesting,
close.
interesting.
Close. Yeah.
Yeah, Winslow's kind of a globe trotter. He's been
Yeah.
all over the place. And in the second book that's coming out in fall, which I can reveal, we're going to kind of go into his past as a deckhand on another ship and see his baptism into the world of the unknown. And it's kind of a prequel and a sequel at the same time.
Okay. I was going to ask you where you find Winslow now, but
Yes,
you
yes.
already know where he is.
Yeah, and we're gonna go. It's gonna be a full and rich saga that we're going to do. There's gonna be 5 books, at least in the main series.
Oh, that's excellent.
Hmm.
How many do you think for your World of the Orb series altogether?
Also 5. I seem
Also
to like the
five.
number 5 for
Yeah.
some reason.
It's insane to me that you also do all the illustrations. You're just
Thank you.
doing this all yourself. You're publishing, illustrating, writing. That's crazy to me.
Thank you.
Had you written stories before this that not didn't pan out, but You're just like, nope, I'm not feeling this one, and took any elements of that and brought them into the stories you have now?
Now, I can't say that anything sort of didn't pan out. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes I have some elements. I do a lot of world building ahead of time, and then I would have some elements and say, yeah, this might fit better in here. Um, I did have for my latest Chickenboy book, which is
There it
my
is. Yep.
this is a book for like middle grade, like
Hmm.
ages around age 9. It's about a chicken who eats radioactive birdseed and becomes a superhero. We had these little characters, these baboon barbarians,
Hmm.
and I kind of had some ideas for a similar primate kind of uh, clan of knight type characters in one of the World of the Orb books, but it was so terrestrial in World of the Orb. um I do have, it's an alternate version of Earth, so there's a little bit of overlap between Earth animals and Kartai animals, um but I thought they fit better in the latest book, The Might of the Monkey Man, and they fit perfectly.
They fit
So
perfectly.
sometimes things reveal themselves to you out of order, and
Yeah.
they're meant to be elsewhere.
They just have to find their place.
Yeah.
Will Winslow ever end up in the world of the orb?
Ooh. I have some eagle-eyed readers will see some Easter eggs in the Chicken Boy books
Okay.
to both World of the Orb and Winslow.
So
So I
you're
have lots of background gags in there.
you're amassing like a Stephen King background where everybody is in everybody's story.
Well, there will be some overlap between different books, but none is currently planned between World of the Orb and Winslow. But Chicken Boy is a very humorous series, and so there's lots of fourth wall breaking in that. So there I feel very comfortable including,
Okay.
like a Winslow, like in the background of one of the in one of the scenes in Chicken Boy, they're passing by like a TV shop, and on one of the TVs is this thing that says Monsters in Bayfield, and that's where
Excellent.
Winslow takes place.
Who would play Winslow in the movie when this gets put out for you?
Oh boy. Well, I be very curious to audition Russell Hodgkinson, who was I don't know if you're familiar with the show Z Nation.
I'm going to look it up right now, actually.
Yeah, Z Nation, Russell Hodgkinson. It was a zombie show on the Sci-Fi Channel, and but it was very self-aware and funny also. And he looks
Oh.
he looks a lot like him. He has the energy and
Hmm.
charisma. I think he would be a great Winslow. I do think that Winslow would make a really cool TV show, because it's very monster of the week.
Yeah.
You could have a lot of fun with that, and I love practical effects. I would love to see someone like try some practical effects, at least for the close-ups, like kind of what they did for Jurassic Park,
Hmm.
where they sort of establish the creature in a close-up with practical effects, and then you can cut away and do some impressive
Yeah.
CG stuff.
I
Um,
mean, there's a lot more cryptid movies, TV shows, everything coming out. So
There's a
you
lot
never
of
know.
cryptid interest popping up, period, I notice.
Hmm.
I mean, all of the cryptozoological conferences that I've been doing recently have all been the first of their kind,
Yeah.
and so that's
You,
really cool.
you've been to a lot lately, haven't you?
Yeah, I just got back from Encounter Quest down in North Carolina,
Hmm.
and that was really cool. I met a lot of cool people, and everyone's so nice there. I felt very welcomed by the cryptid community, and obviously I'm meeting all kinds of cool people like yourself and many other podcasters who are talking about my favorite subjects. So it's very exciting. What's your favorite cryptid?
Oh my God. I consider this a cryptid. A lot of people don't. I like thylacines.
Oh yeah, no, that counts as a cryptid for
I
sure.
mean, it's a cryptid now.
Yeah, yeah, it's believed extinct, but people have sightings of
Exactly.
it. Yep.
The thylacine is probably hands down my favorite. It originally started with sea monsters when I was
Mhm,
little,
mhm.
through books actually. So your books will inspire a whole new generation of cryptozoologists
Aw.
too. There was a book when I was much, much younger, Serendipity, about a sea monster.
Okay.
And that started me when like 3 or 4 years old. So you never know. There'll be a 3 or 4 year old out there that reads Winslow Hoffner. I want to make sure I get the title correctly. And then 10 years from now is inviting you on their podcast because they're so excited to meet you because you started their their lifelong obsession with sea monsters.
Aw, that would be wonderful.
That would be great. Do you find when you're writing, does it energize you? Are you excited afterwards, or are you kind of just exhausted after it's
There's nothing more thrilling to me than discovering a perfect sentence. You know, I love words, and I love learning what things are called, and discovering the perfect way to describe something. So it does have an energizing
it
effect on me
does?
for sure.
What is your
Yeah.
favorite book
My favorite book that I've written, or my favorite book that I've read?
that you've read?
That
Well,
that I've
actually,
read.
both. Let's do read first and then written.
Oh dear, read first. I was a big fan of the Redwall series. So I have actually I got Brian Jakes up on the wall here
Hmm.
on my autograph wall, and also I really liked Goosebumps when I was a kid.
Okay. Yep.
He's up there too. I almost had a chance to meet R.L. Stein. He came to the National Mall, and which is not too far
Yep.
for me being in Virginia, and I was the next in line. And then they cut the line, and they said, okay, we got to take him. He's got to go. And
Oh
they
no.
they carted him away on a little cart. I was like, no.
Running after him,
But
screaming. You're
yes, I was running. I held on to the car. It was a high speed golf cart um, pursuit. Uh, no, but I wrote him, and then he sent me back an autograph picture, which is great
Oh,
because
that's excellent.
at the event they didn't have they were specifically no autographs on pictures.
Oh, was it
So I
just a?
brought my favorite book
Oh.
by him, and that was a joy because I loved reading those as a kid. He knew how to
Hmm.
keep you turning the page. Um, and then my great grandfather Lawrence Schoonover was another big inspiration to me. He's on the wall
Yep.
there, and that was I was talking to. It was on Inquiries of Our Reality. I was talking about this picture, and and I think Where the Weird Ones Are. We also talked about that as well. But it was you to use your word serendipity. Um, I had I had dedicated World of the Orb to my great grandfather, when I found out that he was a historical fiction novelist, and it had been done in my family. It's an unusual career path, but to
Yeah.
hear that it had been done, it's super motivating, and learning about him from my family. So I dedicated it to him. The kids, even the school that they attend, is named after his name before it was changed. Before his family's name was changed on Ellis
Hmm.
Island. So the high school is called Von Schoonhoven High, and so that's where they go. Um, but when World of the Orb was released and some of my extended family saw it and saw the dedication, I out of the blue I got a package containing all of his books, and I thought, and it was wonderful because
Oh
they're not
wow.
really in print anymore.
Yep.
You have to find these at old bookshops. The first one I opened, the first page I opened it to, out tumbles a book plate, and it's autographed. It's handwritten. It says, "With the compliments of the author, Larry." And it blew
Oh
my
wow.
mind. And this was right when I was assembling my autograph
Hmm.
wall, and so I thought, okay, he wants to be on the wall,
Yep, he
you know.
does.
So
Oh, that's excellent. So writing for you was always meant to be.
yeah, it's something that I've always been a storyteller. I've always
Hmm.
enjoyed storytelling, whether it take the form of art, illustration, writing, or using film to tell stories, and I love it.
Good. And that it shows just the way you talk about your books now and how excited you get. You definitely are in love with what you're doing right now. You're having a blast
Mhm.
with it, which is great.
I'm having a blast. And I guess to answer your second question, I love all of my children equally. I don't know if I can pick a favorite, but the one that's most prevalent in my mind at the moment is the Winslow Hoffner
Hmm.
series, because uh, he's going to get his sequels, and that's going to be one at the end of the year, and then from then on, hopefully, we'll have a release every year. So
And you did the audiobook recently?
yes, I narrated my own audiobook, which was amazing how that lined up too.
Hmm.
My I had a friend named Sam Yoder who has a school called Allegro Community School of the Arts, and he was interested in getting into doing audiobooks, producing them for independent authors who are interested in narrating their own books. So it kind of lined up perfectly, and this was kind of like a proof of concept thing for the project for him. And it was the timing was excellent, and very quickly I was essentially I had this great access to really high quality recording equipment
Hmm.
that I didn't have or know anything about, to have set it up myself. And not only that, but I got spectacular coaching from him on how to perform within
Hmm.
their narration, because he taught me all kinds of things like, an audience can hear a smile, they can hear like the shape of the face and how you emote, and so you're acting even though no one's seeing you. It is acting. So he kind of reminded me, it's like, imagine you have a whole audience
Yeah.
that's out there, and you're performing to them even though it's just you and the microphone. And so we created just the absolute perfect audio experience. It's almost like an audio drama because of all the different voices. The dialects are a big thing in this book. And so your listeners, if they're interested, there's a really cool trailer that's at the top of my website on
Hmm.
michaelthompsonbooks.com. And if they click through the link right under there, they can listen to a 2-minute preview on Audible. And that's a really nice preview because it contains lots of different, it showcases a lot of the different voices that make the character so distinct.
I'll definitely put this in the description because I do want people to hear this. Just for the passion you have for this book, I can't wait to listen to the audio myself.
For anyone who's interested in going on a fantastic sea voyage adventure with Winslow Hoffner and encounter all these cool cryptids, you can check out Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters, as well as all of my books on michaelthompsonbooks.com. That's the best way to find everything there. We have a brand new, just released audiobook edition that I think your readers, your listeners, potential readers may really like. So it's got all the great sea monster action for you guys. And we also have World of the Orb there and the Chickenboy series. So there's a little bit of something for everyone in the family, and great gifts for your family's favorite readers. So check out michaelthompsonbooks.com.
Excellent. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.